Well, it is Friday 10 to 5 and it is whether or not time, and today we are looking at the dangers of a warming planet, the past. We're looking at the past events that have happened that were severe and recorded. Firstly, we're going to look at the floods that happened in South Africa. 1968, Port Elizabeth. You see that the road was eroded and you can see the intensity of rainfall that happened in these regions due to the damage that has happened to this road, and you could see that the rain was extremely severe. Then how then do we say today that if we do get something similar and say that it is because of climate change? And looking again at 1968 in Port Elizabeth, you can see the evidence of lots of water that really pushed the car and put it upside down, located it in some area where it's not supposed to be. Strong winds again that also helped to push the car. And again, we cannot look at this event alone and say, well, it is because of climate change. This gives us evidence that it is normal to have severe floods and severe downpours, and also looking at tropical cyclones. Now let's look at other events that have happened in the past around the globe. In Italy, 1966, we had floods that took 113 lives. In Peru, 500 people lost their lives, and in Spain, 42. And the list goes on. In China, 260. In China, again, in 1991, 2,295 people lost their lives. And in Bangladesh, 1,600 people lost their lives. And we can't look at any of these single events and say, well, there goes climate change. And again, looking at a hailstorm, 1788 in France. The hail size in these regions, it was so big, the size of a grapefruit, and I think we should change the name from grapefruit to be bigger than an orange fruit, because the hailstorm was a size of a grapefruit. And remember, this fruit is bigger than an orange, and having that falling over your head, that could take your life. And it also affected the harvest in France that year, because the harvest was very bad. They didn't produce anything. In 1980, USA, tropical cyclone Allen took 235 lives. South Africa, pneumonia, took 109 lives. In 1984, Bangladesh, in a cyclone took 11,000 people lost their lives in that day. And again, we cannot look at those single events and say, well, there goes climate change. In Pongola, in the same year, 1984, the road and a bridge were destroyed because of lots of water coming in with a tropical cyclone. Now, moving further in Vanuatu, Typhoon Uma took 50 lives, and 1,000 lives were lost in Thailand by Typhoon Gay. And looking at Nina, 650 lives were lost. Somalia drought, 290,000 people died due to drought. And now we can't look at the drought currently happening in the western parts and the eastern parts of Africa and say, well, there goes climate change. Drought hazard data, looking at Ethiopia, 367 in 1987, in Sudan in 89, 250, and in Uganda as well. We've had this before. In Angola, 10,000 lives were lost due to drought. Now, how do we look at the current drought and say, well, it is because of climate change? Gale force winds, St. Anna, 1847, USA, look at the size of the tree. It was pushed down, uprooted by strong winds. So these events have happened before, and they are happening again now. But how do we say now that it is because of climate change? Snowstorm in Eastern Cape, 1853. People and animals froze to death. And this happened in South Africa. Storm surge. All the water that you're seeing in the middle of this town came from the ocean. This is all salt water. This is not rainwater. So it is because of storm surge, and it happened in 1938 in Rhode Island. And again, we cannot say this, it was because of climate change. And if it happens again today in Western Cape or maybe in KwaZulu-Natal, how can we say it is because of climate change? Now, a heat wave in Lincoln, July 25, 1936, 29 days of intense heat. And we cannot go back again and look at this and say, well, the heat wave was because of climate change. Then how do we say that today that the heat waves, all these disasters that we are getting, like tropical cyclone Emma, it is because of climate change? Well, this is how it is. In the past, we've had these events. These are the heat waves. They've been happening, but they happen time and time, but not like all the time, because currently they are happening all the time. Each and every year we do get intense heat waves. Each and every year we are getting intense tropical cyclones. We are getting lots of severe floods, and this is because of climate change, the frequency in which these events are happening. Because back then they were happening after some time, but this time they all just happening every time. So here is a question: is climate change a reality or a hoax? You give us the answer. That's all. Ndawuyendo.